There's a leadership problem happening right now inside organizations, and most leaders don't even know they're causing it. A manager gives instructions, the employee completes the task, the manager looks at it and says, "That's not what I meant." The employee walks away thinking, "That's exactly what you said." Nobody lied, nobody ignored directions, and yet communication still failed. Here's the strange part. We've built machines that communicate better than we do. Artificial intelligence does something humans rarely do. It forces clarity. If you give AI vague instructions, it gives you vague results. If you give it precise instructions, it performs exactly how you wanted it to, which quietly exposes something uncomfortable. The biggest communication problem in organizations is not listening, it's assumption. We assume people understand our expectations. We assume tone carries meaning. We assume relationships feel missing content. But machines don't assume, they require intention. And this is what we're discovering. We don't struggle to communicate because we're human and emotional. We struggle because we're imprecise. Today's conversation really isn't about technology, it's about a mirror, because interacting with AI is revealing something so profound about leadership, relationships, and conversations. The greatest illusion in communication is believing that it actually took place. Welcome to Authentic Encounters, Lena Speaks, the podcast where we explore the psychology underneath leadership conversations and the moments that shape how we show up at work, home, and with each other. Today, we're talking about how artificial intelligence is quietly teaching us about being human. And I could think of no better guest than Jason Pagett, the host of the AGI Advance, Grow, and Innovate with AI podcast, as well as Schools Out Saturdays podcast. Jason, welcome. Jason, welcome to Authentic Encounters. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and just wherever you want to jump off at in this particular conversation?
Well, thank you, Lena. Thanks for having me on your show. I know you're going to do great. You've been on my show a couple of times, and you bring so much energy to every conversation. I, I guess I will eventually get to how you and I met each other, but I am a person in long-term recovery, which I don't always bring up, but it is kind of relevant to my story. So until I was 32 years old, most of my life was traveling around the country, working in the restaurant industry, sometimes fine dining, sometimes not. I dropped out of Indiana University after a couple of semesters because I found out they didn't offer a degree in cocaine and alcohol abuse. And at the time, I wanted to get my PhD and work for the behavioral health unit of the FBI. So I had fairly high aspirations. I've always kind of kicked myself in the butt for never even getting anything beyond a high school degree. But in when I was 32 years old in 2006, I got sober. I cleaned up, and then about 8 years later, once I was married and had a family, I ended up thinking that alcohol was my only problem. I got a running injury, and so I spiraled down again. That was actually a change that pivoted my life because I tried to go back to the restaurant industry sober, and I worked for Ruth Chris. Great organization, great money, but as you get older, like just being a waiter wasn't resonating with me anymore. And so when I landed in recovery again, this whole new paradigm had come to the Midwest that had started in the 90s on the East Coast with there being multiple pathways to recovery. I pivoted and I got a job working in behavioral health. I helped build a peer recovery coach program with Nathaniel Metz and Phoenix Paramedic Solutions. I shifted from running peer-based programs to a chief marketing officer for a couple of years and really got into social media marketing in particular. And then I decided, like, I'm getting older. I haven't saved any money because I was out there screwing around for so many years. Like, I need to make as much money as I can. So I shifted to a development director. I thought without education, the one place you can make good six-figure money is if you can bring in millions of dollars from nonprofits, you can make some pretty good money. And I landed the Salvation Army, and that was 2022, November was when ChatGPT launched. Really changed my life.
Good. Listen, you had some very unique experiences of clarity and things of that nature that kind of shaped your life, right? So that part has been really good to hear. If you could, share with them about our authentic encounter and how it crossed paths, and which is now leading us to be on each other's podcast. So tell your rendition of how we met.
It's, to me, it is hilarious. And I think maybe to you, not to everybody else in the audience, but actually that chat GPT moment really plays into it. So I was always strong in philosophy and writing and language. Like those were my strengths in school.
Mhm.
Very came very natural to me. Math and science and things like that were very difficult for me. So
Yes.
when ChatGPT launched, I realized that there was all of a sudden this tool that could help bridge that gap. And I fell in love with large language models and started pivoting towards like how can I change my career to be more oriented towards the adoption of this technology that's obviously going to change the world. And so I had already had a lot of connections at Purdue. You know, we do a lot of things with him for our nonprofits and whatnot. And I got invited to this. I don't know if it was a chief data officers or chief software. Like you were giving a talk on emotional intelligence
Yes.
to a room full of mechanical engineers and software engineers, and you
Yes.
made a joke about the fact that EQ was not notoriously their strong suit. And I think I laughed out loud and everyone looked at me like, what the hell's so funny? And that was it right there.
Yes. And it's so true, right? So now day and time, when people call me in for trainings, I often laugh because I do tell IT and engineers with the way technology is moving and the pace at which it's going, we need you to lead the way. We need you to be in the room. We need you to speak to us in normal language, in clarity and intention. And most of the time, we need you to do that in human form. So yes, we met there. I was excited to have crossed paths. So talk to me about your love for and excitement for AI and uh, honestly, how it's helping with human to human communication.
Well, certainly. So I ended up going back to Phoenix Paramedic Solutions as a chief strategy officer, and now I'm like one of the only probably no code chief AI officers in the country. But
Okay.
we are looking at both through the community paramedicine lens and through a consulting lens, like how do we help everyday people adopt AI to empower themselves in their lives and internally in our company and externally, you know, how do we navigate the BS that's out there, right? Like, I think there's always two sides to every coin, right? And
Mhm.
so, one of the epiphanies that I have had in working with large language models is yes, the engineers need to learn how to speak more humanly and relate to people better, right? But we who are not engineers need to learn a little bit from these machines and the way these engineers think about how we communicate with each other as well.
Yes. And so thinking about that, when we talk about clarity and intention, like AI responds best to clear prompts, right? And intentional language. What does that teach us about how we as humans assume understanding instead of really communicating clearly when you start talking about technology, language amongst certain, roles within technology and just your everyday person, right? Employee, boots on the ground person trying to navigate that communication. Where does clarity and intention come along in that process?
Can I set this up with a humorous story?
Yeah, do it. Do it.
So WALA, which is the Wabash Area Lifetime Learning Association, is a
Mhm.
nonprofit in West Lafayette that has mostly retirees, a lot of them more Purdue professors, more on the humanities side of the house, who just go every spring and fall for all these classes, everything from basket weaving to like the history of Nazi Germany to, you know, what's something they want to, I mean, there's just a plethora of volunteers that come in and that 2 semesters ago, they came to me and asked me to come and teach this AI 101, and I was honored. For one, I was like, "You're right in Purdue's backyard. Why wouldn't you go to Purdue for that?" They were like, "Well, no one will understand what the people from Purdue are saying." And I said, "Okay, I can get with that. Like, I can communicate this." But the fun story is I had a woman last semester raise her hand and say, I'm just amazed because I can use the Gemini AI search so much
Yep.
better than I could use Google because I would put all this stuff into a Google search and it was like I just confused it. But the more I put into the AI search, the more it's happy about it.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, you need to think about this like a husband and a wife. If you're doing a Google search, that's your husband. Get to the point, fewer words as possible. Let's move on. If you're talking to a large language model, you might as well act like you're gossiping with the girls, because the more context you give
Yes.
it, the better outcome you're going to get out of it, right? And
Yes.
they finally laughed at my joke. It was the first joke I landed, but I could see that ahas on their faces with that.
Listen, this is so true, right? So I have a senior citizen mom, praise God, she's still here with us. But when she would go to Google, I would just drop my head because she would just use all these languages and I would get so frustrated. I'd be like,
Uh-huh.
could you please be concise? But switching her over to AI, I'm like, perfect. It needs more of that information anyway. But before, I'm like, it would drive me bonkers. I'd be like, why are you talking so much to it? It doesn't even know what you're saying. But that is really good. So I like the fact that you talked about, the a different population and segment using AI and Gemini and things like that. What are some other tools that you've seen that kind of work across generations and across like lifestyles and industries?
Well, first off, I was just talking to my co-host on my podcast, and she was saying she didn't even notice the Gemini, like AI mode, for a long time, right? That it
Yeah.
was even in there. And I said, well, that was by design, because actually, I think these tools are, they do have the power to democratize our ability to do more, navigate more. Like, one of the best use cases I have seen, Anthropic's Claude, which is a little bit less personality friendly and a little bit more technically correct, has less of a tendency to be
Okay.
sycophantic, which is the technical word for telling you what you want to hear. It has a screen share feature. And so we have this amazing employee at work who will do anything. She's such a diehard. She's a paramedic, but she does a lot of data entry and stuff. But she has a hell of a time navigating a computer. Like, she does not understand the cloud, like all these things she didn't till 3 months ago, when she came to me and I was like, from now on, before you ask me a question, I want you to ask AI. And I'm going to show you how to screen share with Claude so that you can share the screen you're struggling with and explain the problem that you're having. And it will walk you through it as slow as you need it to without ever getting frustrated until you can figure. And she's becoming much and much better at navigating. I could see a lot of senior citizens utilizing, or just people who don't, it's not just senior citizens. I'm a generalizer and I shouldn't be, but I'm a Gen Xer. There's a lot of us who don't like technology or don't
True.
navigate it that well, right?
True. I will say that's you just taught me something I didn't even know. So I'm gonna have to get with you on that one as well. So the other thing about that though is you brought up something about onboarding and how just your ability to interact with her and not make her feel down, but you're introducing and training her at the same time. So you're having some level of empathy, like she's struggling, she needs to be onboarded, but at the same time, you're giving her a tool that can work with her on her level that doesn't necessarily come through and judge her with the gaps that she doesn't know about the technology. How often do you see that benefit showing up in the way that you're seeing people interact in the various spaces, whether it's the workplace or just in life in general?
More on that side than the flip side, which I'd like to talk about as well. So the
Yes,
flip side, can I bring that up real quick? So if we take that same
absolutely.
analogy of
Yes.
the woman wanting to over pontificate in a Google search and under pontificate to a large, if we take that same analogy to work or home, right? And again, I'm going to generalize, but historically we've always been like, my wife thinks I can read her mind, and then she's mad because I didn't do it the way that she wanted me to do it, right? Well, you hear the same thing in the workplace. Like, a boss will give a couple sentence dictation to someone and tell them to go do something, and then they bring it back, and their boss is like, "That is not at all what I wanted," right? And so, through prompt engineering, I started to realize, like, the way that we prompt, we could learn a lot from about how we communicate with each other. Because prompt engineering, the basics of it are, tell it what role it's doing. So you are a context editor, tell it what outcome you're looking for. And so you actually explain what, and then give it an example of what good is if you really want a good outcome. Well, if every boss in the world did that when they asked their employees to do something, how much better outcomes would we have at work, and how much less would we have to redo things? I had a boss who used to say, if you didn't have time to do it the first time, how are you going to find time to do it a second time? So
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that really plays in there.
Yes, there's a phrase I often teach in my communication trainings. The greatest illusion about communication is that it took place. So, I mean, people are always struggling to hone in on clear communication. No matter what organization you go in, one of the challenges will always be communication, and correct prompting and things of that nature can definitely start to help us in that. Talk to me a little bit more about how you begin to process and the mapping and all of that good stuff when it comes to AI communicating and how it is affecting people across the work paradigm.
Well, what I find is kind of a double edged sword in the sense that first
Mhm.
off, I have introduced leaders and very, very smart people to the concept that if they were to give if they were to communicate more like they could prompt, and these are people who have leveraged large language models and understand prompt engineering, and the idea seems to resonate with them, but it doesn't really seem to hit them over the head that it's them I'm trying to change the behavior of. They think it's a great idea for other people. They don't see where they might struggle with that. So that I have not figured out how to have that uncomfortable candid conversation yet. On the flip side, the non-techie people or the people who struggle with technology or are a little resistant to AI, all you have to do is find something that actually either makes their life way easier or is like magic to them, which is very different for all people. So, we talk about the fact this might be a lot of work on the front end, but
Yes.
you get a lot out of it on the back end, right? But if you can find that chat GPT moment for all your employees, all of a
Yes.
sudden you see those wheels start spinning and they're like, I wonder what else this thing I used to doubt
Mhm.
could do.
Yes, that's good. Speaking about that, so like, what is it when you start putting that human collaboration and machine together? Like, where is that point where people become what I like to call psychologically safe using the information, interacting with it, trusting it to give them what they need and things of that nature around some maybe honest dialogue as they're trying to work through implementing AI?
That's people on podcasts always say that's a really good question, but actually that is a really good question. And it kind of speaks to my passion and in podcasting, which is I have a Saturday conversation that you were just on
Okay.
about, how we need to implement this stuff in K through 12 education, because I think I we cannot rely on general public information to do that.
Right.
Is the easiest thing I could say, because you have all these different companies with all these, most of them are motivated to raise a bunch of money. It costs insane amount of money to run these things. So they to even break even, you have to be trying to make money. You do have guys like Demis Hassabis who are running labs that are just trying to, save the world, but they're few and far between. This is what I would say to people out there who want to use one of these things safely. First, if you're a kid, like take a class on how these things actually work, because it's just an algorithm. It doesn't have a personality. It's really good at mimicking our personality, which humans have never come across in our lifetime. I mean, think how much you love an African gray bird that has like 75 word vocabulary. You're like, this is cool, right? Well,
Yeah.
now you have a machine that can pretty much mirror your language. Of
Yes.
course, we're gonna be a little bit tricked by it, but
Yes.
to adults, I would say the best thing you can do is learn to have Socratic conversations with these things. Like, ask it to push back, ask it for the flip side of the argument, because the real danger is in that sycophancy. It's in its tendency to tell you what it thinks you want to hear, and basically co-sign your BS, right?
Mhm.
Which can get dangerous in all kinds of different spectrums.
Yes. That's another thing too, right? That people have to understand is this isn't a free pass. You really do still need to go back and double check and do a little bit of your homework to make sure that the integrity of what you're saying and the integrity of what it's informing you of truly is key, and that it's just not making up stuff you want to hear and things of that nature. Nothing's perfect in this life, and we still have to do a little bit of due diligence, wouldn't you say?
Oh, I would totally say, over and over. I mean, I can give you a really quick example. I was just working
Yeah.
with 2 Claude models today, my own personal one that I'm trying to do like a proof of concept at work, and my personal one, I had write some skills, and I'm having it help me build out a project for the company and leverage the skill, and I'm like, "Here's the output that skill keeps giving me. It's horrible. Like, I
Mhm.
don't understand why this darn thing isn't working," and it's like, well, what are you wanting it to do? And I'm like, well, you're the one that designed this skill. This is what I want it to do. But turns out like it just either it didn't understand me or it went down its own rabbit hole. And so it devised something completely different. And today it understood what I wanted. Last night at 3 o'clock in the morning when I was working with it, it understood it differently. So it's more of a multiplier and a coworker. Like I've never had a coworker that we didn't once in a while have to check each other or throw out an alternative idea. That's kind of the value in having a partner, right?
Right. And that's the thing. AI can analyze sentiment, they can kind of pick up on tone and patterns, but it doesn't feel. That's what people need to understand. So it's contrast in the fact that, oh, it can show up in certain ways that you think you know how people say, I use AI to be my therapist because I need somebody to chat with online and things of that nature. But it's not really big on emotional intelligence because it doesn't have that human capability communication aspect. So, what would you say to people that are using it in terms of having a somewhat online companion, somebody to spitball back and forth to just in social settings, emotional settings, and things of that nature? What would be some of your advice and things that you have seen as it relates to that?
Test but verify. I
Okay.
mean, is the best thing that I could say. Like, run things by another human being. I think I've been told before if you had a mentor who was encouraging you to make all kinds of life changing things and like really go for it. Like, if you had a council of people around you of wise elders, they would say, I love how successful that individual's been, and I love that they're taking an interest in you, but you should probably run some of those big ideas by other people as well, because if they make that much sense, they're going to resonate with other people as well. If they only resonate with you and that mentor,
Mhm.
right? So if we personify it, it's fairly easy to see that you're not going to trust just one source all the time.
Talk about how maybe biases and assumptions reflect what you feed AI and how that can maybe skew the feedback. Maybe it doesn't help you see a lens outside your own based on how you're crafting it to interact with you.
Yeah, it's really interesting because if you look at the algorithm that keeps people engaged in social media, it's outrage, right? Like that is well known, that's the number one thing that will keep boost engagement. Whereas,
Yeah.
and I asked somebody like, why is it the exact opposite on a large language model? And essentially, the feedback I got made sense, which was you're having a one-on-one conversation with a large language model. You're having like a community conversation, and you're just throwing rocks out of your glass house when you're on social media, right? So it does have all the models, even the ones that are more tuned towards business outcomes, have a tendency to kind of tell you what you want to hear or lean into your perspective. So I think you have to take a couple of things. We may get to a point where we train a bunch of smaller models to be subject matter specifically good at things on a clean data set. By clean, I mean like verified. So for medical, if it was only trained on medical journal stuff from vetted medical journals instead of sometimes the large language model doesn't know how to give credence more to that medical journal than
Yeah.
to what some guy on Reddit said, right? So until we get to the point where we have a clusters of models that are talking to each other that actually know, the internet is where this is all coming. That's the original training material, and the internet has a lot of bins. They don't really understand how to train these models. Like some of it's still a little bit of a black box.
Mhm.
So you never know what bias it's inherently going to have. You know, maybe it
Mhm.
paid a little too much attention to Twitter in its initial training. And so now you have kind of like a right leaning jerky model, or maybe it paid a little too much attention to Facebook and you have like a woke, they would call woke model like just realize this is a reflection of the internet feeding you a ton of information, and you still need to have your own sense of ethics and judgment to weed through that.
Oh, that's good. I like that. I like that. What I would like to know a little bit more about the human advantage. What is that human advantage of as we continue to advance in understanding AI and it becomes more and more essential for humans to help master communication? And how do we master communication, use AI, but not fall into the trap of losing human connection? How do we do that?
So this is one of the things I will tell you, prompt engineering, like for those of us who've been real deep in this space, have kinda over the whole prompt engineering. Like, I can ask a large language model how to tell me how to write a prompt, and it will optimize it, but
Yeah.
so I kind of fell too far into that without
Mhm.
realizing, like, actually, prompts are a great way to get multidisciplinary teams to be working with AI collectively. If you have, like, a shared prompt spreadsheet or some
Okay.
way of sharing prompt best practices within a company, now you've got sales talking to marketing about, hey, I used this prompt in, pick your model in Gemini the other day and look at the infographic that it created. And then marketing's
Mhm.
like, that's awesome. We use that. You like, that's a great way is just kind of shared learning, I think is a great way to maintain human communication in this space. If we ever really want to become efficient, I think we're a long way away from efficient because you
Mhm.
really have to clean up your data. You
Okay.
have to map all your processes. You
Mhm.
have to have SOPs for everything to really create agentic workflow. So I would say the thing we're learning from these large language models is we need to clean our crap up, right? I mean, how many people have a SharePoint that's unnavigatable in a
Yeah.
company? You will never be able to automate everything away if that's what all your data looks like. So we need
Yeah.
to tighten our procedures and learn from the machines. And then I do think that level of human discernment and human taste is something that's going to take a long time before it could be replicated.
Good. So, listen, Jason, you started our interview off and had this great story about how your life developed over time and how you got to the introduction of AI. And sometimes we've joked about, how in other podcasts, how you have a little bit of an edge on your kids, you know what I'm saying, in this space, and you love that. I'm interested to know, with such a powerful formation story of how you came to be the man, the husband, the father you are today, the influencer you are today, podcaster, all of the things, right? How could AI help you shape your story and tell that story in a book? If that would even be anything of interest to you, how could you protect your story, but also use the aid of AI to help translate that compelling story to be concise in one book for people to read and understand a little bit more about you? How could AI help you?
Well, it's been on my radar for a while. So
Okay.
thanks for the nudge. There are a few ways that people can do this. One is use something like ChatGPT's advanced voice and just have conversations with it and tell it stories, and then you'll have a system of record kind of in there. But what I've done is I audio record almost everything I do and have for almost 2 years. I think if you look at, so let me tell you, can I bring something else in here about
Oh,
communication that
yes.
I think is snake oil sales a lot of times?
Yes.
There's a lot of companies out there trying to sell an executive assistant custom GPT or like a trained executive assistant for you. Okay. The thing that I tell people who are looking at doing that is unless you have an ambient listening device recording day in and day out during business, that's like trying to promote the company secretary to chief strategy officer because all that custom GPT has context of is bits and pieces of what's going on in your business, not every single conversation, not
Mhm.
every single interaction, right? So I do think we will give up our privacy and embrace, at least in a business sense, publicly, that'll probably be a huge, huge, huge debate. But in a business sense, I think if you record everything all the time, then you can put that in something like a notebook LM and you can go back and question it like, hey, what do we say we're going to do? What did we deliver on? So I have tons of those notebooks. And
Mhm.
my idea is to get a prompt to go through and mine all them for the conversations about AI, put all of that into Google Doc, and then use different models to have them completely write each chapter and just sell it as like, hey, here's how ChatGPT writes a section of a book. Here's this one was written by Claude. So lowest effort at all. You could easily just mine all the stuff that you have and then have the LLMs write it. And if you're transparent about it and do it as a comparison to how they're writing, then people don't feel like you try to pull the wool over their eyes by having an assistant LLM write something for you.
Yeah, that's good. Now, since we're talking about communication and AI and the human side as well, you know, your podcast on the weekends talks about K through 12. You're talking about that educational component and things of that nature. What would be your advice to administrators? What would be your recommendation if they are backing away or not embracing AI in the school system, what would be your encouragement to parents of those young learners K through 12? And then what would be it to the community at large? What would you say about embracing, introducing AI into the way we help communicate, build, and structure our interactions with people?
I would say if you look at like the World Forum that was just held, Davos, and some of the communications at the federal level, like this is definitely a disruptive technology. We are talking about a fourth industrial revolution. So there's no more head in the sand. I think that actually what I would say to those people is some of the things that I would tell you this can help are things that you think are problems or problems that you need solved. So I would
Mhm.
start with the administrators and teachers and say, listen, this can take away a ton of your administrative work and let you get back to actually interacting with students in the classroom, right? Then I would say it's unfortunate that the United States of America has expected you to raise our children for the last 15 to 20 years since both parents went back to work. But on this one, you have to. Like, there's no what there's this is so profound that we need the K through 12 school system to mass educate people on this to parents who I do feel have the ultimate responsibility, but some of them are in situations where they just can't live up to it. Some of them just won't, right? I would say take a note from the social media revolution, like figure this crap out and be talking to your kids about it. Don't just bury your head in the sand and then one day realize that your kid's out holding the anti whatever protest because the TikTok algorithm made them believe some stuff that you think is absolutely absurd and you wonder where they learned it. So
Right.
don't bury your head in the sand. Try to keep up a little bit. Have those open, honest conversations with your kids. And then I would say to everyone, don't forget how powerful a beginner's mind is when it comes to navigating a new territory. Quit thinking about what you're going to teach kids about this technology. Put it in their hands, give them some safety rails, and let's see what they teach us about this technology.
Good. That's so powerful. Listen, what excites you most about AI? What are you looking forward to in 2026? Here we sit, and it's a new year, and technology is always advancing, so is AI. What are you looking forward to specifically this year as it relates to AI, its interaction with human beings, and where it can take us?
I would say for most people who are non-technical, who have really gotten into AI, what they find is now that they're much more engaged in their work and that they have twice as much work as they did before they started doing AI because the brainstorming and the design thinking and the strategic,
Yes.
like it just allows you to do so much, but it's exhausting. I think if you look at Claude Code and Claude Coworker, it looks like we may actually be able to start automate away some of our busy work with fairly high trust. I would like to, as my ideas expand, to trustingly be able to, right? Not to be like, "Oh, yeah, I guess I'm gonna plug this AI browser into my HIPAA compliant software and hope we don't get sued for millions of dollars." Here's how I would frame it. The software people already have figured out how to leverage this stuff, and some of their jobs have changed because of it, and they've stopped hiring because of it. They'll figure all that out. But I think lay people are going to start to learn how to leverage this technology the same way computer science and data science people are in the next 18 months.
Yeah. I will be honest with you, as a newly full-time entrepreneur as of 2024, May 2024, I will tell you there is no way I could have maneuvered these last, 12 to 14 months without the assistance of AI. There's just no way that I could be a solopreneur and have kept my head above water. And now what it has forced me to do, right? Is lean on it and really understand it. But there's a ton of classes out here. I'm super excited. There are podcasts like yours out here. I will tell you, it has been beneficial. But I also do, like you say, I do my due diligence. I understand it's steady growing. We're steady learning about it. But in a world that is so busy and we're so burnt out all the time in workplaces where people are saying things like, we don't have enough head count. Everybody's wearing many hats. Like, you gotta find a way to leverage AI and the AI agents just for us to get back to some level of breathing, slowing down, and being able to truly interact and effectively communicate in our workspaces, in our homes, and in our community. So, before we wrap up, I just want to leave you with the last word about AI, about your story, how you got here, about the authentic encounters that led you here. What would you like our viewers to know a little bit more about you or AI?
Well, I think the thing that I would like to impart on everybody out there is don't be afraid of this technology. We are the most resistant developed country when it comes to AI adoption. We're really pushing back against it. I think this is our opportunity to make the shift. What I see America has become is consumers instead of creators. Whether you're talking about inside of a factory or you're talking about on social media and YouTube and TikTok, like put these things in young people's hands and walk alongside them and let's start creating a new world and new industries and new ideas and new medicines. Like we can shift from just consuming all the time, or if we don't, we will end up in a Wall-E type environment at some
Yeah.
point in time.
Jason, I appreciate you sharing your story with us today. Not only your story, but your passion about AI. We really do appreciate people like you that are paving the way for innovation and human connection. Until next time, I hope that you are enjoying your day and spending it with the people that matter the most.